Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville and Knox County government, politics, business, education, and just about anything else that might grab our attention. I'm Scott Barker, the editor of Compass, a subscription-based website newsletter where we report on all of these topics and more. You can find us at CompassKnox.com. I'm joined remotely today by Compass co-founder Jesse Mayshard. Jesse, where are you and what the heck are you doing?
I am in Memphis, Tennessee, over at the other end of the state. Came over on a little trip to see some things, talk to some people. So, yeah, I love Memphis. It's a great city. It's raining here right now, sadly, but happy to be here.
I have only been to the bus stop in Memphis. that was 40 years ago. I was a teenager.
Recommend for people who maybe haven't been here in a while, there is the National Civil Rights Museum, which I went to. I'd been to 20 some years ago. It's been updated a bit with their audiovisual stuff, but of course that's at the Lorraine Motel where Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And you walk through the museum, which kind of tells you the whole story of the civil rights movement. You actually end up at King's hotel room, which has been sort of like preserved and restored to its state at the time in 1968 that he was killed. So it's pretty sobering. I also went to a super cool, the former home of Stax Recording Studios has been rebuilt and turned into a great museum celebrating Stax and Southern soul music. Also fantastic. A lot of great food, obviously. It's just a great city. I know it's a bit of a hike for Knoxvillians. It's farther away than Atlanta or Asheville or some of the other places we go, but worth the trip.
Yeah, what was it? I saw, this was years ago, and I may be a little bit out of sorts here, but from it's about as far as Detroit is from Knoxville. And,
yeah, I mean, it's 400 miles. You can do the mile marker from downtown Knoxville. You get, well, I guess you have to go a little bit east to downtown to get to 400, but then you just drive those 400 miles across on I-40 and you get off right in downtown Memphis.
Yeah, but I mean, you think, I always kind of think, okay, Memphis is in Tennessee, so it's got to be closer than Detroit, Michigan. But no, it's not
so much.
Anyway, we are also joined by our intrepid producer, Lord Seth Barber. Lord Seth, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I can piggyback a little bit, and really Jesse's out in Memphis to help me with my weather report, because what is raining upon Jesse right now will be raining upon us tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow morning, somewhere in there. So, yesterday to everybody listening, but I called it on Friday when we were recording, so I did a good weather report, and I just used Jesse to do it for me.
I can verify that there is indeed rain here, so if it continues its eastward trajectory, it will get there.
Yeah, the wild card in that is always the edge of the Cumberland Plateau.
Yeah.
So, sometimes storms will slide to the northeast along the top of the plateau. Instead of coming here, but most of the time they come here. So it's most of the time the plateau is not an impediment to storms. So anyway, we had it's a lot of politics this week. We'll talk about some of the bills that were would have an effect on people in Knoxville and Knox County. They're in the Tennessee legislature, which wound up its business today, correct? I believe they're supposed to. We'll also talk about the Knox County Schools budget, which was approved last week. We'll talk about Indya Kincannon's Mayor Indya Kincannon's budget proposal for the city, which has not yet been approved. It'll come up next week for its first vote. And then, but there was a lot of stuff going on with the election, the county election, that's the primary election that's going on. And we'll start off with that. There was, it's been a crazy kind of week with the primary, and the, we had some weirdness going on with endorsements. So we talked about that a little bit last week, but more this week. But we hit the halfway point of the early voting period on Wednesday last week, and it's kind of interesting. Had 13,600 people had voted in person, and another close to 1,500 who had sent in absentee ballots, or they're in nursing homes, and the election commission will go out to nursing homes and help people vote that way. But the turnout's pretty solid. Granted, turnout in Knoxville and Knox County is always pretty bad. So it's but it's on the healthy side of bad so far, if you want to put it that way. It's up 75% over the turnout 2 years ago. So that there were actually 4 years ago. So that's pretty good. So it is also higher than it was in 2018, which was the last time that these seats were on the ballot, and there was not an incumbent running for mayor or sheriff. So, those things, when there's an incumbent for mayor or sheriff, it's kind of dampens turnout because, first of all, they seldom get much real opposition in the primaries. So, if any, so, but this time we have three people running in the sheriff's or the mayor's Republican primary, and four in the primary for sheriff. Of course, the sheriff's primary is essentially the election, since there is not a Democrat who would be running in the general election. So whoever emerges from the sheriff's race in the Republican primary is pretty much assured of being the sheriff in September when everybody gets sworn in. But and one of the things is, we don't have there are no countywide Democratic races in the primary, and only one district contest is competitive in the primary, and that's the school board seat in the first district, which is East Knoxville downtown, out to Marble City, Mechanicsville, that area through downtown and west of downtown. Other than that, there's no reason for Democrats to vote, really, other than, if they just want to, give a shout out to their Democrats who are going to be on the ballot in September or in August. But the interesting thing there about turnout, the election commission, put out some statistics at the midway point, and
11,105 60 plus of the 13,000 total. That's the stat. That's the number one stat to me that screams out. It's the 60 plus demographic is 11,000 plus of the 13,000 total.
Yeah,
as of the date of this, or as of the most recent information that the election commission has provided.
Yeah, and of course, older voters always vote in greater numbers than younger voters.
Right. I love my parents, but I don't need to make decisions for this thing. Come on, people. Let's go. Let's do better. Sorry, Dad.
But yeah, I mean, it's that's the thing. We're going to have essentially people who are in their 60s or older, 60s, 70s, 80s. Most of them who live outside the city limits of Knoxville, and who vote Republican. That's going to be that's the group that's going to decide who is the mayor, who is the sheriff. All of the races, especially in the Republican primary. Although even with that, in so far in early voting, in the younger demographic, is it 18 to 24, I believe?
18 to 29.
29.
Yeah.
Republicans are outnumbering Democrats. So, but there's a caveat, and in general, overall, Democrat or Republicans have a huge number of people are voting in the Republican primary as opposed to the Democratic primary. 12,294 people as of Wednesday had voted in the Republican primary, and only 2,792 had voted in the Democratic primary. So you've got this huge, that's over 80% that are voting, that have voted in the Republican primary. And this is in a county where when in head-to-head contests, the Republicans tend to win with 56% of the vote. Although in some areas they'll have more, but the county-wide races, it's not, it's a good, it's a solid win at 56%, but that's where they usually are. Got 80% here. That tells me that a lot of Democrats are crossing over to vote. And Jesse, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think both people who identify as Democrats and also people who are independent voters, including those who maybe lean more toward Democrats, but a lot of them are definitely voting in the Republican primary. And of course, there's been a lot of discussion of this. I feel like there is every year. This year, maybe more than usual, because there has been, over the last couple of years, the Secretary of State's office has added a little bit of language, both to be displayed at polling places and also on the forms you have to sign to get your primary ballot. Talking about, under state law, you are supposed to be a bona fide member of a party in order to vote in its primary, or you're supposed to pledge allegiance to that party. But since, as we know, we've talked about this, we don't register by party in Tennessee, and so there isn't actually a way to prove that. There's no legal standard. We talk about the parties set standards that their candidates have to meet in order to go on the ballot, but we don't have any standards for what somebody has to meet in order to, qualify for a Republican primary ballot. And we'll talk about some things the legislature tried to do in a little bit. But one of the bills that came up in the legislature this year, as it often does, was an effort to change this and close the primaries. And that failed again this year, as it often has, which basically leaves us with what really is an open primary system, even though in recent years, some Republican Party officials have kind of tried to make it seem like it's really not that open, trying to discourage some of that crossover voting. I thought it was interesting this week that County Commissioner Courtney Durrett, who's a Democrat, she's one of the 3 Democrats on County Commission. She's a Democratic Party office holder. You can't get much more Democratic in Knox County.
That's pretty bona fide.
Or bona fide, that's right. Then she is. But she put out a video on her social media saying, look, There's a lot of people who have questions about this. I want you to know I am voting in the Republican primary. And she listed the reasons why. It was the things you talked about, wanting to have a say in some of the races where there are no Democrats in the general election. But then also she said, and she's obviously looking at this from her position as somebody currently sitting on county commission, she wants to vote for candidates who she thinks have the best interests of the county at heart and are going to be willing and able to work with everybody in whatever position they get elected to. And she made a point that, there are some Republicans running in these primary races who are making a point of saying, we don't want anything to do with Democrats. We're never going to work with Democrats. And so she obviously wants to vote against those people because she's looking to get people who she can work with too. And I just thought it was very interesting for somebody who is like literally an elected Democratic official to just go out publicly and say, here's what I'm doing and here's why I'm doing it. And that just reinforces that regardless of whatever language might be on whatever sign, we really do have open primaries in this state.
Yeah, that's one of those things that, I've talked to a lot of people who have done that, but it's kind of like they, it's almost a confessional thing where they say, well, yeah, I'd voted in the Republican primary and, it's not, and certainly not a public official who just comes out and says, hey, I'm crossing over. You ought to cross over too. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Although it has happened now. And,
no, the question is will the actual mechanics of this, the deterrent ever get into play? I haven't heard a story statewide since any of this has come into play of anybody going in and grabbing the other party's ballot and getting accused. I walked through this with Scott Davis like a year and a half, 2 years ago, as far as how the process has to work. It's a pretty complicated, difficult process.
You mean Chris Davis? Let's keep our Davises straight.
Which what did I say?
You said Scott
Davis.
Okay, my bad. I'm looking at Scott. I said
right. Well, and Scott Davis is a different guy.
That's right, and very active in what we're talking about today. But yeah, sorry, Chris Davis, and the process at which has to go down for you to get whatever the actual criminal penalty is with this is pretty convoluted, to be polite, I suppose.
Well, and I think it has to happen in the moment, too.
Correct.
Like, you have to be challenged at the ballot box. It's not like, somebody can't watch Courtney Duret's video and say, aha, she did this, and go and file some challenge, post facto and say her ballot ought to be discounted, not least because there isn't actually a good way to do that.
Yeah.
Once your ballot is cast, it's cast and also your name is not on it. So you kind of can't remove ballots after they've been cast. But right, it's not like somebody who wanted to do this you would have to get a bunch of people, ready and waiting at the ballot places to sort of pounce when they think somebody who's not bona fide is requesting the wrong ballot. And so far, anyway, as far as I know, nobody's going to that effort.
Right, because again, and then the next step being that 3 of the 5 Knox County election commissioners, 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat, have to then hear it and 100% agree to then get it to Sharm Allen's desk to then go through the prosecution process of it, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there on the record for everybody in case you were curious or afraid of whatever you're afraid of, this is what would have to happen.
Yeah, and again, once you've cast your ballot, you have cast your ballot. Like, nobody is going to come to your house, a week or a month later or whatever and say you voted in the wrong primary. That's just not how the system is set up. No,
it's we do have secret ballots, so it's not it's not one of those things that I'm sure there's probably a way to ascertain who voted how.
I mean, I often write myself in on something, so that might be a way for them to track my ballot down because I'm the one time I've been written in, but that's about it.
Well, there you go. And but anyway, it's it is an interesting phenomenon and one that is playing out this year in Knox County. I think it's I do think that a lot of those, and that's my opinion. an opinion based on experience, but it's still an opinion. But it's that is probably happening, and in pretty heavy numbers. And now, how that will affect the Republican races, I don't know. Most of the Democrats that I know, they don't like any of the sheriff's candidates in the Republican primary. And so I don't know, who that would benefit in the Republic. As far as the four candidates who are running for sheriff, I'm pretty sure that most of the Democrats who are crossing over would be voting either for, Larson J. or Kim Frazier for county mayor instead of Betsy Henderson, because Betsy Henderson is more of a culture warrior than Frazier, and they're more kind of technocratic, basic, kind of old time conservatives.
Yeah, Henderson's running a very explicitly partisan campaign. She's saying, I am the real Republican conservative. Those are the people she's trying to get out. And so in doing that, she is almost certainly not attracting a lot of people who don't identify that way.
I want to touch on that real quick. I apologize for interrupting again, but because I think one of the inferences that the Republicans like to put out is that people are voting for the candidate they think their Democrat can beat in the general. And I think Courtney's statement's probably more standard. I think there are some people that do that, but I think more people are crossing over to get a candidate that they think would be better for the county, not better for their guy to beat later on.
Well, especially because, I think a lot of people are sort of pragmatic and looking at these things, and there are a handful of races that have the potential to be close in the general election, some of the county commission district races. But in general, I don't think anybody particularly expects that the county mayor's race is going to be that close in the general election. And so people who are voting in the county mayor's race probably assume that there's a good chance the Republican who wins the primary is also going to be the next county mayor. So, I don't think you're going to see a bunch of people trying to game the system that way to say, I'm going to vote for the most far right county mayor candidate and hope the Democrat beats them in August, because it wouldn't be a good bet, let's say.
Not at all.
I'll see what the Kalshi prediction has for it. We'll go from there.
Yeah, and we were talking about the being a Henderson going after conservatives. She got we talked last week about the weirdness around Tim Burchett's endorsement that
quasi endorsement.
Yeah, it's kind of the phantom endorsement that he made in the race. His predecessor, Jimmy Duncan, who represented the 2nd Congressional District for a quarter of a century, just like his father had represented the district for a quarter of a century. Jimmy Duncan came out and did endorse wholeheartedly Henderson's campaign. One thing that that's something that if you know anything about Henderson was not a surprise, because Henderson actually worked for Jimmy Duncan both as an intern when she was in college and after college when she moved up to D.C. and worked for him and for Connie Mack IV, who's another Republican out of Florida, who's was a Republican representative at that time. She worked for them, in D.C. So that was not a surprise.
Yeah,
that Jimmy Duncan would endorse her campaign. So, but
yep, and of course, also worth mentioning that Duncan's son, John Duncan III, is also on the ballot, running in the Republican primary for county clerk this time around.
Yeah, that's that's a strange thing. If people have been around here a while, remember that, John Duncan III, who was kind of seen as, a possible heir apparent to the congressional seat that his father and grandfather had sat in for so long. Once Burchett, had his run and it was over with. But he was seen as being an up and comer, but he was elected to be the trustee, and promptly got himself in pretty hot water with making unauthorized payments to employees and to himself.
Yeah, improper bonuses.
Yes, bonuses. Anyway, he got busted for that. He was found. He ended. I believe it was a guilty plea to. And I believe the charge was some kind of malfeasance.
Some kind of misconduct.
Yeah, misconduct. That was it. That was the word I was looking for. Official misconduct, which can be a felony in Tennessee and was in his case. Now he went through diversion and has had his record expunged.
Right.
But it still happened, and everybody still remembers it. And but this is his rehabilitation tour. It's kind of funny and I don't know exactly how big of a role that played in this, but he is not raising campaign cash from people in the public. His father and his stepmother have donated to his campaign. He has loaned himself money to run his campaign, and that is it. He has no, or at least as of the end of March, had no outside donors. Don't know if he just kind of said, well, what's the point of being on a fundraiser and nobody's going to come? I don't know, but
that's an interesting field for clerk, which is another one of these offices that does not have a Democratic candidate, right? I don't think there's a Democrat in the general in that. So there's 4 Republicans running there, and you have these two kind of familiar names from the past, and Duncan III, and then John Whitehead, the former property assessor, who's been around county politics for years. Sort of a lesser known candidate in a guy named Rodney Lane, and then Richie Beeler, former county commissioner, who is the current chief of staff in that office under Sherry Witt, who's the current clerk. And I think that's an interesting race to watch. My sense is that the kind of Sherry Witt is now running again for Register of Deeds with no opposition whatsoever, Democrat or Republican. So she is going to be the Register of Deeds again, an office she held for 8 years before running for county clerk. And then you have Beeler, who's her chief of staff, now running for county clerk. And then another former employee of hers, the current Register of Deeds, Nick McBride, running for trustee. So those 3 are sort of a joint ticket, I would say. I think a lot of the people who are going to vote for one of them are also going to vote for the others. And we will see how it goes. But I would not bet against the Sherry Witt machine. I think she's kind of put together. It's a much more low-key political operation than we've seen in the past with people like Lillian and Richard Bean and so forth. But she still has put together a pretty good little cadre of people in those fee offices with a lot of experience who have all, well, in her case, in McBride's case anyway, managed to run their offices with basically no friction, no scandals you heard about, nothing like that. And so even though Richie Beeler is running against maybe more familiar names to a lot of people for that clerk's office, I think that Sherry Witt ticket is a pretty strong one.
Yeah, and you mentioned the trustees race. McBride is the current Register of Deeds, term limited, so it's kind of like he's going to kind of casting him out to run for something, and that was as good a thing as any. Especially when the current trustee, Justin Biggs, was the subject of a criminal investigation that did not result in charges, but
for him anyway.
For him, for his chief deputy, yeah. But into basically kind of extravagant spending and improper use of county vehicles. A grand jury apparently determined that he wasn't supposed to use a county vehicle because he got reimbursed for his use of his car. He got paid for it, a stipend for his own personal vehicle. But then he also, which means you shouldn't use a county vehicle. Then you should use your personal vehicle. He used the county vehicle anyway for several trips to Nashville. I'm assuming the grand jury thought, well, at least it was on official business and not personal business, so we'll cut him a little slack. I don't know. It's kind of what it seemed like. But McBride is running against him. McBride is, as you said, he's been completely scandal free. I don't know how many scandals you can get into in the Register of Deeds office. Anyway,
there's probably a way.
There probably is, but he did not manage to find one, or at least did not look for one, something like that. Anyway, he's not had any hint of scandal, in there, and there's another candidate. There's a third candidate in that race. Barry Hawkins, who, is working in the property assessor's office now. He was a longtime trustee's office employee, but he hasn't worked in the trustee's office for 15 years. He left when Duncan came in, and he worked for. He worked for Mike Lowe when he was a trustee, who also pled guilty to a felony.
Mike Lowe is kind of like the grand criminal mastermind of our recent run of trustees. Subsequent trustees to Lowe managed to get themselves in trouble. On lesser counts, Mike Lowe really he went whole hog at it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's kind of funny that I joke with when I talk to people just casually, that most of the time, Knox County officials who run afoul of the law, who commit some kind of misconduct like that, typically do it for peanuts.
Yeah.
Nickel and dime stuff, not low.
$1,000 here and there.
Yeah, or less. I mean, they'll just go to the grocery store and put it on the county credit card, and stuff like that. Not low. Low it was hundreds of thousands of dollars that he was responsible for fleecing the taxpayers of. So not only for him, but for others in his office as well, which I guess is one way to ensure that your subordinates are loyal to you, is to let them in on the graft. But anyway, that's an office where there's been lots of stink in the last since this entire century. Other than when Ed Schaus was in there. Right. Ed Schaus was he served 2 terms as trustee. He was again like McBride, there was no hint of scandal or anything like that.
There were some hiccups with adopting a new computer system, but that wasn't a fraud issue. It
was it's just
an IT problem.
Yeah, nothing, nothing remotely criminal or questionable about spending. It was just that was a bad software system.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Biggs manages to hold on for a second term. I mean, none of the indicators are very good. He has raised almost no money. Almost nobody came to his campaign kickoff. People in the party mostly seem to be kind of keeping their distance from him. And so, he may well, even though, as you say, he has avoided any kind of criminal accountability or anything like that, all of the talk that there's been around goings on in his office might still be enough to limit him to one term.
That's very important to note that I think he's raised maybe $6,500 at least to the first 3 months of the year, which running for a countywide office is nothing. He's loaned himself money to be competitive. That's I do agree with you that I think that a lot of the Republicans, at least Republican donors, are keeping themselves at arm's length right now. But then again, when you go in, it's one thing. You might not want to donate money to somebody because your name is going to be associated with them, but that doesn't mean you can't vote for them.
Yeah.
So, we'll see how he does. When among the rank and file and among anybody else who votes in the Republican primary, who once you used to say get in the ballot box. Now you're just on at a table with a partition. But once you get behind that partition, you can mark down whoever you want, and nobody will know. So anyway, this week is the last full week of early voting, and they'll then the election itself, or the primary election, is next week on the 5th, and so we'll be continuing to cover that. We've been running campaign profiles of the different races. We've still got a couple more to go, and so if you are interested in the election and want to know what's going on, CompassKnox.com is a pretty decent place to find out. So anyway, the one thing that happened, we reported this on Friday. This happened this morning. So on Friday, Knoxville City Mayor Indya Kincannon presented her proposed budget for the next fiscal year. It will surprise no one, or shouldn't surprise anyone, that there is no tax increase in the budget that she's proposing. But the budget is, pretty lean. It's not, the city's not awash in cash. It's not in trouble, but it's not awash in cash. The net budget is going to be $499 million. A lot of it is focused on some of the things that she's always been focused on, and it's affordable housing, parks, and things like that. But but she's going to be doing that without raising the property tax rate, which of course she's already that's already happened once during her time in office, and that seems to be the limit for city mayors. Bill Haslam raised property tax. The property tax rate was increased once under Bill Haslam, once under Madeline Rogero, and once under Kincannon. So that tracks. But they are going to have to take. It's a thin year. I mean, the sales tax revenues are kind of flat. Sales tax revenues soared right after, during and after the high points of the pandemic. But they've come back down, stabilized a bit. They're still increasing, but not at a fast clip, not as fast as inflation, for example. So, it's going up about 2.5%, and inflation's around 3%. And going up probably as the war in, or the whatever it is we've got going on in with Iran is continuing. But they are taking like $6 million out of the fund balance to do that, and basically what that means is there's about $6 million that they want to spend that isn't really covered by, mostly isn't covered by increasing revenues. So so that is certainly something to keep an eye on. But it is a reason that the mayor has given for not doing some things. But she, says that she can, has been able to do, some things. She's going to, and this is kind of an interesting thing. They're going to hire or create 5 new positions in the police department. That has not happened in anybody's memory. But they're full. Police department is fully staffed now. They're going to add 5 positions. They're not sure exactly where, what types of positions, but I'm assuming there'll be more patrol type positions. And that's for years and years and years, it's been the problem has been that the police department has, I believe it's 315 authorized positions, and they only had 260 or 270 officers. Well, that's they've done a good job recruiting, they've done a good job retaining. They're up to 315 now, and they're going to get 4 more under her budget if City Council approves it. So, and one thing that makes that kind of interesting is, and this is something where, I didn't think I would see this, but this is, we're closing in on the end of April, which is the 4th month of the year, and there have been 0 homicides in the city of Knoxville.
Knock on wood. Don't say it out loud. What are you doing?
Well, I know. Kincannon said it out loud, so
all right. It's a quote. My bad.
So if it's if there's a jinx,
it's Kincannon's
it's on her.
Heard.
But yeah, I mean, there have been no and non-fatal shoot. There have only been 2 non-fatal shootings. I mean, people just aren't shooting at each other in Knoxville. I don't know what's wrong with people.
I guess bullets are expensive, but they don't want to waste that.
Maybe, maybe it's one of those economy things, that's one thing that's going on. Of course, the very fact that there's not been a homicide yet, of course, could change tomorrow, could change an hour from now, and could change, in a big way. You get multiple homicides in a day or two. So, but that's a pretty significant shift. I don't think you can necessarily say all of that is on the police department. they typically respond to crimes, and it's less likely that they are proactive. But we also have, but they are more proactive than they used to be under Chief Paul Noel. There is much more of an emphasis on community relations and that sort of thing. We also have the violence intervention programs that are going on that the city coordinates but doesn't run, and those undoubtedly have helped in this to prevent people from going at one another. Whatever it is they're doing, they're doing it right, and so all these things work. And then the Project TLC program they have, where they take areas that they have crime statistics that show their crime is bad. They go into that area. They do more community relations. They do more patrolling. They do the city's, whatever, if there are codes violations, the city goes in and helps property owners clean up their blighted properties, and get in compliance with the code, things like that. Kind of that broken windows theory of fighting crime, and all of those things have been working as well. I mean, these areas where they've gone into to do that, have seen a dramatic decrease in crime, and plus, we've also got this nationwide, plunge in crime. So it's not all the stuff that that's what I was going to say.
Crime went down a lot in 2025 in major cities across the country. They were obviously, after having had a sharp spike during the pandemic, which we did see in Knoxville as well. And so, yes, these are national trends, they're local trends. Everybody's trying to understand why they go up and why they come down. And you've mentioned some of the possible factors, and lots of cities are pursuing those kind of violence interruption and violence prevention efforts. But they were also pursuing those before the pandemic, and then we had the big spike then. We have a lot of people, we have a lot of guns, and it gets pretty hard to sort of parse what's going on. But when you see these kinds of trends, not just at the local level, but nationwide, it means that, something real is happening. And fortunately, it's happening in the direction of fewer people getting shot. So that's good.
Yeah. It almost is one of those things where, I really don't care what it is, as long as it keeps it up. One of the more interesting theories that I've heard about that was lead. That when the late the mid 1940s, after World War II, when cars proliferated, really just kind of, the car ownership just exploded after World War II. And of course, we had leaded gasoline back then, so had all the emissions from leaded gasoline. And about 20 years after that, in the mid 1950s or in the 1960s, crime started soaring, especially in cities, and that would be when kids who grew up inhaling lead emissions were getting to the age of being able to commit crimes and be in their early 20s, and then when lead was taken out of gasoline in the 70s and 80s, 20 years after that, crime started going down. So that was a theory, actually, that lead pollution was one of the things, because lead does all kinds of funky things to your brain.
It has bad cognitive effects
Yes.
on people. Yeah, that is one of the theories that's out there. There are a lot of
others. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, but that's one that's kind of appealing to me. Anyway, back to Kincannon's budget. It is, it's one of those things where it will be, it'll council will approve it. There might be one, maybe two at the most votes against it. But because it's one of those things, whenever a mayor proposes a budget that doesn't raise taxes, it's almost to the finish line right there. So, another thing, speaking of budgets, the school system, Knox County Schools, their budget was approved, or at least approved by the school board on Thursday. John Roswick, the superintendent, had proposed a $717 million budget. That's about 2/3 of the county's overall budget. So it's a big budget. It's the biggest portion of the county's budget. It's $717.9 million, which is up from $700.5 million this year. They're going to be using the increased revenues to give general employees 2% raises, teachers 2.5% raises, and they're trying to get this up ahead of time. They have what they're calling Project 2028, which is where they will reassess their pay scales to make sure that they are competitive in the marketplace for teachers, which for years Knox County Schools could not compete because their teacher pay was just too low. Teachers would rather go to Maryville or Oak Ridge or Blount County schools to teach because they paid more. And now Knox County is getting in to the point where they're getting competitive with those districts. And the one thing that's kind of that sounds really, really good, but then there's kind of a flip side of this is that enrollment in Knox County Schools is falling. It's going to be falling about 1,000 students between this year and next year. At least that's the projection, and it's been falling for the last several years. And what that is doing, of course, the state's funding formula is tied to enrollment, and so if you have fewer students, you get less money from the state, and they're going to have to. One of the things that they're going to be doing is they're going to be eliminating 57 teaching positions and 27 non-teaching positions. Now they have said that those will be basically covered by attrition. People who are retiring or who just take jobs somewhere else or whatever. But that all of the actual flesh and blood teachers and employees who might be affected by this will have a place somewhere in the school system. So they're not going to. They might
have to take another job in a different school, but
right? Yeah,
they can move people around to do that.
Yeah, and so that's going to be there. And and one of the things is this is something that kind of came up during the recent redistricting controversy in Powell, with Powell Elementary, and trying to redistrict some of the students that when they go there to alleviate crowding at that school, and they are actually performing a really in-depth, comprehensive study right now on what the actual capacity of each school is. How many students can each school actually effectively educate? Not how many you can cram in there, but how many you can educate. One of the things is, not the school system is, losing, students, but one of the things is, growth happens in, at different rates in different parts of the county. There are areas where, where the student population is exploding, and not shrinking, trying to match, and one of the things I want to do is to keep a good teacher-student ratio in each of these classrooms, and so that means that some schools are going to need more teachers, some schools are going to need fewer teachers, and this study is going to help them figure out kind of how to do that a little bit better. But that's one of the big challenges right now, is that there are areas of the county that are growing, where the schools are overcrowded, and there are other areas where the county is not growing as fast, and the population isn't growing as fast, and there are fewer students there, and so getting that staffing level matched up when you've got 57,000 students is pretty difficult. And anyway, that has little to do with the actual budget that they passed, but everything else is one of the things that they talked about doing, they always talk about doing, is at least under Ryswick's watch, is pouring more resources into the classroom. That's just why they're going to have these the teacher raises, things like that go into the classroom. They actually cut more positions out of the central office to be able to do that, because the salary changes, they're going to be with the pay increases will account for about will come up to about $21 million, and the increase in revenues is about $17 million. So they're having to move money around to put into the classroom, as they like to say, and part of that's coming from the elimination of positions in the central office. So, anyway, that the school board has approved that. Now it goes, school's budget goes to Mayor Glenn Jacobs' office for incorporation into his overall county budget, which will then go to county commission for approval. So that's all part of the process. It seems like it never ends.
Well, and I think we can, that school's budget, like you said, is up to, like, under 2.5% from the previous year, like a super small increase in that budget. I think we can probably anticipate a similarly tight county budget overall. Like, there's just, as we've talked about, there's not a lot of money floating around this year, and seeing that in Kincannon's budget, I'm sure we will see that in Jacob's budget as well. This is going to be a tight year.
Yeah, it sure is. One of the interesting things covering the election is some of the candidates seem to think that there's waste in county government, that all places you can really cut and get some real savings, in county government. But, after 24 years of conservative Republicans in charge, especially the last 8 under 7.5 under Glenn Jacobs, I find it very unlikely that there's a lot of fat to cut.
No, I mean, you really you got a nickel and dime if you want to cut anything. And the problem with nickel and diming is that all of those nickels and dimes, like, you cut a position here or a position there. First of all, those are people who are like doing something that people want done by the county government. And second, you just don't make, your average county position that you cut, maybe you're going to save $50,000, maybe you're going to save $70,000 once you include benefits and everything. But if the goal is, because we need all this money to invest in infrastructure, you got to cut a lot of $70,000 a year jobs before you get anywhere close to being able to pave a mile of road. Those numbers just don't add up. There's not money sitting around in the county budget that you can repurpose to any significant degree for the kind of infrastructure investments they're talking about. Infrastructure is expensive,
Yeah, and that's one of the things that that Jacobs has run into. I mean, we've talked about this before. They pave about half the number of miles that they need to pave every year. And this is just maintenance. Forget building something new. This is just maintenance. They're so it's it will whatever. I'm sure this year Jacobs it's his last budget. It's not going to have a property tax increase. It's going to be a bare bones, very, very austere budget. It will be interesting to see next year what the next mayor, whoever that mayor is, and what the next mayor and the next commission, because there'll be several new commissioners, on that panel, and it'll be interesting to see kind of where they wind up in the first budget that they deal with.
Yep.
We had an eventful week in the legislature. They had their fast and furious rush to the end of the session. Jesse, you've been following a lot of bills in the legislature. Thank you for that, because I didn't have the bandwidth to do it, and I really appreciate it. But so talk a little bit about some of the more significant developments in the legislature, and I guess one of the things we can start with are vouchers.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit before, but ultimately the legislature did vote to expand Governor Bill Lee's school voucher program, not quite as much as he wanted. The current year, there's funding for 20,000 vouchers for students. Lee wanted to double that to 40. And after some wrangling, the legislature eventually settled on adding 15,000. So there will be 35,000 vouchers statewide next year. Students who received them this year under the law will get first dibs to get them again next year, which, given that there was more demand than they were able to satisfy this year, you could kind of question whether, the people who already have them, should they just automatically get another one? But I think the reasoning is they don't want to be yanking kids in and out of school every year based on whether or not you get the lottery to get a voucher. So there will be more vouchers, but there was a last minute effort to add even more by expanding the other voucher program that we have. People may have lost track of this, but the state created a pilot voucher program back in 2019. It was initially only available to students in Memphis and Nashville and was fairly strictly income limited. You could only have a household income up to 200% of the poverty line. that does still exist, even though it has been supplemented now by the broader statewide vouchers, the Education Freedom Scholarships, they call them, which that's the program that's going to have 35,000 vouchers available next year. The original Education Savings Account, those are still operating in Nashville and Memphis. Chattanooga was added at a certain point. But then at the last minute, there was this effort to go back into that program and expand it to Knox County, which would have, increased the size of that program considerably and would have made it available to Knox County students who maybe couldn't, wanted to get some of the Education Freedom Scholarships, but didn't get those. Then these ESAs would have been available too. And ultimately that did not happen. They did not pass that bill. So Knox County is still excluded from the ESAs, but you can still apply for one of those Education Freedom Scholarships, although I believe the deadline for all of that is passed now. Like if you haven't applied for one for this fall, I think you're already too late. But they'll be available then the following year, I guess. So that's what happened with vouchers. We will see, this year, this is the second full year of the statewide universally available vouchers. There's already starting to be some concern among some Republicans as well as Democrats about the escalating cost of the program as you expand it, as you make more of them available. We're now going to be up to, I think, spending $260+ million on it this year. If you keep going up every year, $100 million here, $100 million there, that starts to add up. They are saying that this is not currently taking away from existing levels of public school funding, but that kind of growth is only sustainable for so long. Other states with universal programs have already started to run into this. Florida is now consuming, 20+% of their total public education funding is going to vouchers now. Arizona is having this problem as well. And there are Republicans in the legislature already who are saying, how much money do we have to throw at this thing? So we will see. It seems, of course, we will have a new governor next year, and it'll be a new legislative session. And so we'll see how much and how fast they want to try to grow that. But already there are signs of some legislative misgivings about how big they want that program to get. Another thing to mention that didn't happen, but we talked about it a bit, there were a couple of bills in process that could have had significant impacts on elections in Tennessee and in Knoxville specifically. One of the bills was seeking to align city elections that currently take place in the off years, in odd-numbered years, with the existing state and federal election cycles. So that would have moved City of Knoxville elections, along with about 60 other cities, onto those even year cycles. And so we would have had Knoxville elections happening in the August and November of every even numbered years at the same time that we're voting for governor and president and so forth. That did not happen. It got very close. The House passed it. This is the farthest this bill has ever gone. It's been proposed several times in the past, and the House of Representatives actually did pass it, but it did not get across the finish line in the Senate. There was not a lot of public debate about it there. The Senate sponsor just pulled it because he said he didn't have enough votes. But there were concerns that were raised about it, including how it was going to be implemented, because to align those years, they would have either had to give an extra year in office to City of Knoxville officials who are already in office, or have a weird election like in 2027 where it only would have been for 3-year terms instead of 4-year terms. Anyway, none of that happened. So for now, anyway, City of Knoxville 2027 elections will continue as usual. Some version of this will probably come back because it keeps coming back, and it got as close as it ever has to passing this year. So it might still happen sometime in the future. Didn't happen this year. Also, a bill to close our primaries. We were talking about this earlier, that we have functionally open primaries in Tennessee right now. As there has been almost every year that I can remember, there was a push by Republicans in the legislature to close the primaries. That bill also got pretty far, and then it fell apart to as it has in the past, because there are Republicans who have misgivings about closing their primaries, that's actually going to push people away from the party. There are Republicans who see it as a benefit to have people voting in the Republican Party primaries. The best indicator of whether somebody's going to vote for a candidate in a general election is if they voted for him in a primary. And so I think some of the thinking there is like, if we keep the primaries open, we get more people coming in, and hey, they've already voted for that candidate once. That can carry through the general election. So that did not change. Lots of drama and last minute proposals and everything. But the bottom line is our elections, both local and state, will stay the same as they have. The other thing I wanted to mention is we did have, as usual in recent years, a whole lot of anti-LGBTQ bills got introduced. Some of the ones that got the most attention at the start of the session did not pass. There was a bill by Juno Bolso, Republican from Brentwood, that was trying to establish a weird sort of right for people to not recognize same-sex marriages in a personal or professional capacity. It wasn't totally clear what the actual impact of that would have been. But there was some sense that, well, like maybe hospitals, for example, could say that we don't recognize same-sex marriage, especially say it's a religiously oriented hospital. We don't recognize same-sex marriage, therefore we're not going to grant spousal visiting or medical decision-making authority to a same-sex spouse, that kind of thing. Anyway, that bill did not pass. There were a few bills aimed specifically at transgender people that did pass. One that is going to require healthcare professionals across the state who provide any kind of treatment, whether it's surgical care or, hormonal care, gender-affirming health care. That is all going to have to be reported now to the state and tracked. And there were a lot of LGBTQ people who protested this and said this was sort of, kind of creating a bit of a state registry of like transgender people in the state. So a few more protections were put into the bill to really make sure that data is anonymized, that is not supposed to be reported, with the patient's name or any of that kind of identifying information. But it is going to be aggregated at the state level, and it's a little unclear what the state's going to do with that information. But a lot of the fear in the trans community is that all of this is really just about intimidating healthcare providers out of providing this care at all. Another bill that did pass allows people who have received, gender transition, gender affirming care treatment to file a lawsuit up to decades after the fact if they believe that there was some harm done to them in the course of this treatment. And again, the sponsor said, well, this is to make sure that patients are protected. But again, the concern is that this is really about just trying to make providing any kind of gender affirming care in Tennessee so potentially litigious and difficult that a lot of places will just say, we don't want to deal with this at all, which does seem to be sort of the overarching push. The one other bill there I wanted to mention is they passed a bill that says no local or state government agency basically is allowed to recognize gender identity, transgender people, as a distinct group for the purposes of protecting them from employment discrimination or, anti-bullying policies or anything like that. Basically, if a local government like the City of Knoxville, which does have this, if you have it in your anti-discrimination ordinance, say for employees, if it mentions gender identity, you have to take it out. Basically, you're not allowed to say the words gender identity. You're not allowed to refer to gender in any of these policies or ordinances in any way except to say that gender is immutably fixed by your sex at birth, and that's the only way it can be defined or understood. And anything else that makes reference to anybody, say, being able to have a gender identity that's different than their birth sex, that's now illegal. In Tennessee, it's illegal for the City of Knoxville. The other major cities in Tennessee also have these protections: Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga, and Clarksville. Those were the ones I checked. They all, in their employee discrimination ordinances or policies, include, it says you can't discriminate on the basis of race, gender, religion, ethnicity. They all do include the words gender identity in there. They are going to have to remove that under this state law. It's not enough for the state to just say, we don't recognize that. They are ordered by this law, like the city of Knoxville is going to have to, unless they decide to fight it, they're going to have to bring an ordinance to city council to say, we have to revise this to take these words out. We're not legally allowed to say that we are going to protect transgender people or non-binary people from discrimination anymore. The mayor maybe or council members could still say, like, we still care about them and we don't want people to discriminate against them, but they're not allowed to put that in writing. It cannot be in a law. So we're literally, it's not enough for the state to say it doesn't want to protect transgender or non-binary people. They also don't want any local government, any school system, anybody to explicitly recognize that and say that we're going to protect these people. So it's kind of like mandating. It doesn't quite say that you have to actively discriminate against transgender people, but they definitely are saying you can't say you're not going to discriminate against transgender people.
Oh boy, what the Tennessee legislature never ceases to amaze sometimes.
Yeah.
So. All right.
Remember, transgender people make up like at most 1% of the population of the state, and yet every year for the past several years we've had, tens, if not dozens, of bills introduced very specifically aimed at this one very small group. Some interesting priorities.
Yep, sure is. So anyway, those were some of the things that happened last week that we covered and that we wrote about. There was plenty more. There always is more. There's always more than we can get to. But if those are the kinds of things, these government politics things that education things that you like, check us out at compassknox.com. You can subscribe there. Coming up this week, we have a county commission meeting on Monday. We have one of our more interesting members of county commission, Andy Fox, who represents South Knox County. He is the most outspoken culture warrior on the right wing of the Republican Party on the commission. He is going to make a statement so there's nothing to vote on. He's just going to talk about it. He's calling it March Madness. It's not March. It has nothing to do with madness or basketball. But it's going to be he is going to talk about how Muslims aren't Americans, or they're not. They're people who follow Islam are not capable of being integrated into Western society. He has done similar things before. He talked about a couple of months ago. He had or I guess last month now. It was on the his interpretation of biblical passages about immigration. This is going to be about Islam. He talked about it a little bit at the agenda review meeting last week. Couple of commissioners kind of took him to task for bringing this up. Please, it doesn't have anything to do with what we do in Knox County, and but he's insisting he's going to go ahead and do it. It's kind of interesting too. In the Rules Committee meeting last week, they approved a measure that would have prevented what he did last time about the
Bible study on
the
immigration.
Bible stuff, yeah. Because he made that as a presentation, and this new rule change would say that you can't, the presentations are for other people to give to commission, and commissioners can't do presentations themselves. But this one that's coming up Monday isn't technically a presentation; it's under other business. So
right, they chased him out of one part of the agenda, and so he found
he found refuge in another part of the agenda. So anyway, that will be one of the assuming that he still does it. That will be an interesting, though ultimately it won't have any effect on anybody whatsoever.
Well, it'll have effect on whoever has to hang out and watch it.
Like me, yeah.
Sorry, Scott.
Other than those who have to be there to listen to it, it won't have much of an effect. But that's okay. It's First Amendment right. You can do it. The also City Council's meeting on Tuesday be the first reading on the aforementioned budget that Mayor Indya Kincannon has come up with. They're also going to be considering a payment in lieu of tax agreement for a major apartment complex that is being planned for the intersection of Depot Avenue and North Central Street, just north of the railroad tracks at the Old City. So they're looking for a little bit of tax relief to help get that project going along. And there are other things that's be for the first time since the new commissioner or new council members took office in late December. First time that they've got a really robust agenda. So be interesting to see what the discussion ends up being. I mean, I think the last meeting they had lasted maybe 25 minutes, 25 minutes. And this one, this will be this will be a long one no matter what. So anyway, we will be there to report on what they come up with about that pilot and anything in the budget vote, and and we will also be around to find out anything else that's going on. We'll keep tabs of all the politics, government stuff that's going on, business openings, those kinds of things. We'll be on top of it. Wanted to thank you, Jesse, for being here again, even if it is remotely.
Happy to call in.
Oh yeah. So enjoy the rest of your stay in Memphis. I know that's
will do.
You say it's a fun city. I'll have to believe you because like I said, the only time I've been there, I stopped over at the bus station, and that was it. So, and it was not a very pleasant place.
I can imagine.
So, Lord Seth Barber, thank you for all of your work that you do for us to make the show go smoothly. Thanks to Will Wright for providing music for us. And we will be back next week with another installment of Compass Points.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.